The Xorg server, which is the free and open source implementation of the X Windows system X11, has a rich history that dates back to its origins in the 1980s. The X Windows system, often referred to as X11, was initially developed at MIT in 1984 as the collaboration between Jim Geddes and Bob Schiffler. The project aimed to create a platform-independent graphics system that could link together heterogeneous multiple vendor systems. The original idea of X emerged as a successor to a pre-1983 Windows system called W, which ran under the V operating system. In the early days, X was designed to be used over network connections rather than on an integral or attached display device, providing network transparency. This allowed an X program running on a computer somewhere on a network to display its user interface on an X server running on some other computer on the network. The X protocol has been at version 11, hence X11, since September 1987. In 2005, a great effort was put into modularization of the Xorg server source code, resulting in a dual release by the end of the year. The X11 R7 release added a new modular build system based on GNU Auto Tools, while X11 R6.9 kept the old iMake build system, both releases sharing the same codebase. Since then, the X11 R6.9 branch is maintained frozen and all the outgoing development is done to the modular branch. In recent developments, there have been discussions about a fork of Xorg called Xlibre, which was initiated due to disagreements with the Xorg team, with the fork being seen as a response to what some perceive as the capture of Xorg by Red Hat. This fork is part of a broader context of historical events, with parallels drawn to the past when the X386 board's actions led to the birth of Xorg and the death of X386. Okay, so why did I read this to you? Well, you have surely noticed that in recent weeks there has been a lot of talk about Xlibre X server. One of the things that I would like to repeat in the text that I have read to you is how X was primarily designed to be used over the network. If you go back all the way to my teen years, you could see how systems have been used at the time. For example, at the universities, while people didn't really have computers at home, or even if they did, they didn't have internet access because it was way too expensive or unreachable. You would access the internet generally at the university, and the way this used to work is that you would sit on a dumb terminal which was hooked up to the university server, which hosted all of the people on it, like thousands of people just on one server. And you would log in to the main server via the dumb terminal, the physical terminal that was usually just the monitor, keyboard, and a network card, and a little bit of CPU power just to handle the text on the screen. You would log into the server on where all the people were hosted. You could use then maybe Chat, maybe use Pine or Mutt for reading email. You could learn programming. You could use the compiler. You could access news groups. You can play video games such as MUD, which stands for Multiple User Dungeon, and stuff like that. A little bit more advanced version of these dumb terminals were the so-called X terminals. These are the things that were fewer in numbers, at least where I accessed the university, but they offered a graphical user interface. However, they still ran on the same server. So I would basically choose today if I wanted to log in via the dumb text terminal or if I wanted to log in via dumb X terminal. But generally, I would get access to the same server, to my same account, to my same 2 MB quota where I kept my files and my emails. The difference only being in the way that the interface was presented to me, because the X terminals basically gave me access to a graphical web browser. So that was pretty much the only major difference. Fast forward to today, we now have Wayland, which isn't really a server. It comes as an alternative or the future of X, but in reality, this is just a protocol implementation that is being done by various compositors, such as the one made by KDE team, such as the one made by GNOME team, such as the one made by Hyperland, and stuff like that. So if you go back to how X server worked, it was a software written in C language that would run on the server or on your computer if you're using Linux or FreeBSD or OpenBSD, stuff like that. You would run X server underneath your window manager, your desktop environment, which would simply sit on top of the server. So when someone would program an application for your computer, this application would be aimed at the capabilities of the X server. Thus, it would run on top of X server and not on top of your KDE or GNOME compositors. And the reason why I'm talking about this is because technically the program only needed to be written for X server, and it doesn't really matter which window decoration software you would use. It would all be the same. However, with Wayland, every single Wayland implementation is slightly different. They are just not the same. They aim to be the same, but in reality, they will never be 100% the same. Because everyone is coding their implementation a little bit differently. They are aiming for the standard, but they each have their own bugs in implementation. They each have their goals in the future, how they want to drive the development of Wayland Protocol forward. Some of them will implement some things that may not be in the standard just yet, and thus the remainder of the other implementations will not use this new or advanced feature, which may or may not be accepted into the upstream of the implementation of the standard. So all things considered, why am I saying this? Why am I trying to explain this? Is because when you program an application to target Wayland compositors, there is a chance that your program might not work on KDE's implementation, but will work on GNOME's implementation. I have now oversimplified this because in most cases, this is not the case. But it is possible that the development of every single application is getting slightly more complex with Wayland compared to X11. So, from the perspective of development of the applications, there are still some things that are not up to par with X. Simply because all of the applications written for Linux and Unixes have a long history of like 30 years of testing and writing, and some of the things have been a little bit more complex to create with Wayland, simply because it is designed and imagined to be a lot more secure than X implementation of the graphical user interface. For example, logging of the keystrokes on your keyboard, um, logging what your mouse does, recording your screen, these things are all considered slightly dangerous and potentially insecure depending on how they are implemented. And Wayland protocol really doesn't allow you to do that. You have to use desktop portals technology, which would give you uh, a certain way to access this information. So just from this perspective alone, and I know that I did not really explain it to the detail, but what I was aiming for is that OBS is a screen recording application. I'm using it right now. Um, like the remote desktop applications such as TeamViewer, which is very widely used, although a proprietary software, but still widely used, still doesn't really support Wayland to this date because they do require some complex integration with Wayland protocols. They simply work with X for now, and Wayland is something that is upcoming. And stuff like that, for example, KeyCAD application for CAD is still having some issues with Wayland because they are trying to make it work, but they themselves said that they're having difficulties in understanding all of the different implementations between KDE and GNOME and all of the others that you may be using on your computer. So from their perspective, the full implementation of Wayland might never come in reality, depending on how things are going to go. So in the history of the past few years, maybe like roughly four, there hasn't really been any true development with X. And the reason for that is because of the governing body that basically governs the X development and Wayland development are trying to focus into the future, and the future being Wayland protocol. So a lot of people are still actually using X, but X has some flaws. It has some things that need to be patched. It has some security issues that need to be patched. And all of this is rather complex to maintain. Thus, Wayland was born as a complete rewrite, a complete rethinking of everything. And basically, it makes sense to work and put all of your development into the future and not care too much about what used to be. But because of what I told you a couple of minutes ago, a lot of applications still don't work properly on Wayland implementations. And because of this, a lot of users still use X. I use X on my work computer because some of the applications that I really need for work simply don't work on Wayland. And I don't really have a choice. I can say that yes, I am all in for the future. I'm going to drop the tools that bring me money and pay for the roof of my head. And I'm going to use Wayland, which cannot run tools that I need to, you know, pay for the roof of my head and feed my family. So you see where this is going. A lot of people really need to use X, and it would be wise for everyone if someone would actually work on at least patching the holes, the security holes on X until further notice, until Wayland is truly ready to take over all of the users, because a lot of you are already using Wayland and don't notice any problems. But as I said, some users can't, and for them it could be really important, it is really important that the old system is still maintained and patched. Here comes Enrico. It is one of the developers of the Xorg that have been making a lot of patches, that has been submitting a lot of patches in the recent years. From other news sources, they say that he was like Phoronix reported that he was responsible for over 60% of all of the commits into the Xorg in the past year, of the year of 2024. So he is apparently one of the major players in maintaining the Xorg, and his patches have been accepted. However, in the past 4 years, there weren't really any meaningful releases of Xorg because his patches may be accepted, but they never really arrived in our desktops. So what's up with that? Why aren't there any releases? Why are these patches being accepted and not released into anything? That's kind of a bummer, right? Because for me and my work and all of you who still depend on Xorg, it really would be a nice thing if we could get these patches really, in the use. So a lot of disagreements came between Enrico and the ones that have been gatekeeping his patches from reaching the actual release, and by that I mean the actual users. So he decided to fork once again, second fork of the X server, which is now called Xlibre. And one of the interesting things is that apparently, as well, the Phoronix said it, it's their words. This developer Enrico has been a major player in patching the Xorg server. So now that he has forked it and he's trying to bring it forward to the actual user's hands, all of these patches, all of these improvements, now Phoronix says, I vote no confidence to this guy, and I don't think that he will be able to do anything with this. That's kind of weird stance to make from a news outlet, which is supposed to be reporting news. So here's my take on this. I'm no longer going to mention Phoronix on this one. I think that Enrico is going to have a really tough road ahead of him. I wouldn't jump ahead of the train and say that yes, this is the future. This is going to truly replace Xorg, and we are all going to use Xlibre. It is going to be awesome. Everything is going to be fantastic. We don't need Wayland. No, I'm definitely not saying this. I think Enrico and his team are going to have a lot of difficulties ahead of them, because first of all, they really need to make it a product. They need to present it as something viable. When you go to GitHub and you press fork this project, I can fork Xorg myself. I can just one click and voila, I have forked it. But that's not a release. That's just making a copy of bunch of files. Forking is just making a copy of bunch of files. You didn't really do anything. So I'm not saying that Enrico didn't do anything. He has a history of a couple of years of patches that are waiting to be released. So surely in a couple of days there will be a huge release of Xlibre as a new version, and thus it is going to be interesting to follow how many of the distributions are going to follow suit with the with the implementation of Xlibre. However, there is another problem that Enrico, I'm not sure how well he thought about it, but it is going to be interesting to follow. Uh, One of the difficulties that will come with his fork is one of his own making, and this is him deciding to drop the complete XWayland support. XWayland support is something that is a part of the X server code, which is important for Wayland to be able to run applications which require X. So basically, if you are a Wayland user, you need X server underneath as the code base if you will want to use X compatibility from Wayland, because Wayland really doesn't support a lot of applications. A lot of old applications simply will never work on Wayland unless they are completely rewritten to support it. So Wayland leans on the Xorg abilities to support Wayland to support X applications. You see how that is a little bit intertwined. So if you are using a distribution which implements Xlibre, then you will not be able to use Wayland on this distribution. You will be able to use Wayland, but then you will realize just how many applications simply don't work on Wayland, because Xlibre will not play nice with Wayland anymore. So this is going to be a small war, if I may notice, because if Enrique, I'm sorry if I spelled it wrong. If he is going to be successful in the long run, and I really do wish him all of the success, and I'm going to elaborate on that. If he is successful in the long run, then Wayland is going to have to fall. Either Wayland is going to have to fall, or all of the applications are going to have to play two games, implementation of X and implementation of Wayland, and it's going to be rough. In the future, it's going to be rough. And the reason why I wish him good luck is not because I am a fan of the old or not a fan of the new. I actually use Wayland on this very computer here. It has some nice features that I like, that Xorg or Xlibre simply doesn't have just yet. And it is a trade-off whether you want to use this that has these features but doesn't have these features, or you're going to use this that has some other features but doesn't have these other features. So from this perspective, the reason why I wish him good luck is because the Wayland implementation is dragging its feet. I'm not going to go into any politics. The politics is very obvious to everyone, but they're kind of dragging their feet. I want my computer to just work. Linux is supposed to be easy. Linux is supposed to be easy. It is not supposed to be gate kept by some of the Linux users who think that the most complex ways of doing things are the best ways of doing things. And I would love if more people would be able to embrace Linux as their daily driver and possibly as their only driver, as their only way to compute. But Wayland implementations are kind of dragging their feet. And why am I saying this? Let's take, for example, the Hyperland developer, Vaxri. He did something really wonderful with the mouse cursor that was promptly accepted by the KD Wayland implementation team, and they said whatever he has done with the cursor is awesome and should be accepted not only into KD but also upstream into the Wayland protocol itself. And then Wayland protocol design governing body decided to ban Vox3, the Hyperland developer, because some of the people in his chat room have been uh, saying some things that they shouldn't be saying towards other people who got, how do you put it in English, who got offended at some of the words. So this is all getting a little bit puzzling. If you're going to ban developers who give you useful contributions, then how is your development going to speed up? How is it going to be any faster than it already isn't? Like, I don't know. I would hope that either Wayland development will speed up because it really needs to catch up with Xorg. And I really don't think that it's still not there. The only way they are going to get somewhere is either by making all of the users stop using Xorg, and if they make users stop using Xorg, then the developers of applications are going to be forced into remaking their applications to work with Wayland implementations. They have already started doing that by coordinating with the likes of maybe Ubuntu and the other major distributions like Fedora, who have announced that they're going to slowly drop support for X. And this is not a conspiracy theory. This has been announced a couple of years ago, not last week, as many others are going to have you believe. They have been announcing the gradual Xorg support for a couple of years now. It has now come to the stage where they're going to drop it in a way that it is going to be very difficult for you to put back Xorg into Ubuntu and Fedora. And these two distributions are really if you do not count the distributions that come out of those, like child distributions, they are really the majority of our distributions nowadays. And from that perspective alone, I think when Ubuntu and Fedora finally drop Xorg support, there will be very, very little users who still are able to use Xorg, and that is going to be a shame. And at this point, I'm going to end this video before it reaches half an hour. I thank you for listening to me. If you have any questions or comments, please type them below. I am more than happy to answer all of them and participate in the discussions. Speaking of participating in discussions, there is also a link down below into my Matrix room where we discuss these topics every day. And it's kind of fun. It's kind of fun. It's kind of fun to monitor the development of Linux ecosystem and the broader free software community such as BSDs. It's all very fun. I love it. And thank you very much for subscribing to my channel. Thank you very much for supporting me by joining this channel, by joining me on my Ko-fi page, or even if you just like and comment. I'm going to see you in the follow-up videos today or maybe tomorrow.